Good morning and welcome. I am Jackie Schleicher, the very proud principal here at Oshkosh North High School, and I am so incredibly honored and humbled to be here celebrating our veterans today. We thank each of you for taking time out of your day to gather together and pay tribute to those who have served our country. At this time, I would ask, if you know anyone who has or is currently serving in our military, will you please stand up? If you take a look around in this field house right now, Veterans Day is a day that is about something far bigger than ourselves or about any of us as individuals. Nearly every single person here today knows someone or has lost someone who has served our country. Today's ceremony is a humble reminder and a tribute to the incredible men and women who have given so much to protect our freedoms. Veterans, the Oshkosh North High School community is so very proud to give back to each of you for all you have given to us. At this time, it is my pleasure to introduce Samira Barty, our Student Council President, who will be today's MC.
Thank you, Mrs. Schleicher. Good morning, students, parents, community members, and our honored guests. My name is Samira Barty, and I am the Student Council President here at Oshkosh North. Today, I will serve as your Master of Ceremonies for our program. Would everyone please rise and remove your headwear as the color guard performs the presentation of our nation's colors. Thank you. Please remain standing and face the flag to join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please remain standing. During the War of 1812, an American lawyer named Francis Scott Key witnessed the bombardment of Fort McHenry by the British Royal Navy. Despite the horrific battle, the American flag still remained visible, and Key was so moved that he wrote lyrics about this event. Although the poem has 4 stanzas, only the first is commonly sung. Today, Kiana Fiedler, Dylan Ford, Sophia Isham, Andrew Muller, and Cora Strand will sing the 3rd stanza accompanied by piano. And then please join us as the orchestra, choir, and under the direction of Mr. James Dorschner and Miss Bridget Duffy Ulrich come in on the standard first verse.
Between their loved homes and the war's
are proud to welcome our guests to the 7th annual Veterans Day program here at Oshkosh North. We will continue to have the program annually as we pay our respect to the people who have made the ultimate sacrifice for the freedoms we enjoy today. It is now my pleasure to welcome our first speaker, Bob Hoffman, who we are honored to have present the history of Veterans Day.
I'd really like to thank Jackie for inviting me back again this year. And the music department, wow. Boy, those instruments and vocalists are just fantastic, right? And also the faculty and staff here at Oshkosh North, which I know they're the best in this city. Been here for a number of years, believe me. And not last and not least for sure are you students up there. What great. You give us veterans so much honor and respect. It's really the fantastic part of this program. And I know that tomorrow is really Veterans Day. But today, November 10th, is very special to me. You heard that. It is the 242nd birthday of the United States Marine Corps. As they said, Semper Fi to all you Marines around the world. I know you've heard this before, except for you freshmen, but I think if you listen real closely, you'll probably pick up something that you haven't in the last couple of years. And so with that, I'd like to give you the history of Veterans Day. World War I, known as the Great War, officially ended when the Treaty of Versailles was signed on June 28, 1919. However, the fighting ceased 7 months earlier when an armistice, or temporary cessation of hostilities, took place between the victorious Allies and the Central Powers. The armistice went into effect at the 11th hour and the 11th day of the 11th month, 11 a.m. on November 11th, 1918. In November of 1919, President Wilson proclaimed November 11th as the first commemoration of Armistice Day with the following words: "To us, in America, the reflections of Armistice Day will be filled with solemn pride in the heroism of those who died in the country's service, and with gratitude for that victory." In June of 1926, the Congress officially recognized the end of World War I by a resolution which requested the President to issue a proclamation to display the flag on all government buildings on November 11th. In May of 1938, November 11th was made a legal holiday known as Armistice Day. It was to honor all the veterans of World War I. In 1954, after World War II and the Korean War had ended, Armistice Day became Veterans Day. And November 11th became a day of honor all American veterans of all wars. In 1971, the observance of Veterans Day became a Monday holiday. Many states and a great number of Americans did not agree with this decision. So in 1978, the observance of Veterans Day was returned to its original date of November 11th, regardless of what day of the week it falls on. The observance of Veterans Day on November 11th not only preserves the historical significance of the date, but focuses our attention on the importance of Veterans Day, a celebration to honor Americans' veterans for their patriotism, love of country, and willingness to serve and sacrifice for the common good. On behalf of a grateful nation, I wish to extend to all veterans our sincere thanks and appreciation for securing the freedoms we hold so dear. Those freedoms which make the other 6.7 billion people on this planet wish they could be here with us. Godspeed.
Thank you, Mr. Hoffman. Our music department would now like to pay tribute to our veterans with a song entitled Armed Forces, the Pride of America. The selection will feature each branch of the armed forces. The orchestra will be under the direction of Mr. James Dorschner. At this time, welcome our Oshkosh North High School Chorale Director, Miss Bridget Duffy Ulrich, with a few comments before they begin.
Our Armed Forces Salute Medley recognizes each of the branches of our United States military. As we sing each service song, I will announce which group it represents. If you are a member of that branch, we invite you to stand as we present your song. On behalf of the music department, thank you for your service. The United States Army.
Thank you, the music department, for your performance. We would now like to welcome our speaker for today, Mr. Reuben Schaetzel. Before he comes to the stage, though, I'd like to introduce him a little bit. Mr. Reuben Schaetzel was born in 1923 and was the second youngest of 4 children on a dairy farm in Germantown, Wisconsin. He had great parents and a great family. His parents, relatives, and neighbors spoke German most of the time, but little did he know how important his ability to speak German would be during the time he served in World War II. On December 7, 1941, when the Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor, his older brother wanted to enlist in the Army. At 18 years old, Reuben, who had just graduated from high school, along with 3 of his classmates, were going to join the Marines. Unfortunately, he did not pass the physical due to an accident that happened the night prior. Reuben was accepted into the Army about 2 months later, and his first duty was at Fort Custer, Michigan, which was a military post. He was then assigned to Fort Campbell, Kentucky, where there was a large contingent of German prisoners. His job was to guard the prisoners that were used on farms in the area at harvest time. He would then translate what the farmers needed done to the prisoners, as he was one of the few who could speak German. So now I'd like to welcome Reuben to the stage.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It's sure a pleasure to be here and an honor to be here. I don't know where to start. First of all, I was awful thin on that picture, you know. I've got one of those jackets too, just like that young man down there has, but it shrunk, you know. So, you've all got your programs, and your introduction was very nice. I will proceed to tell you what happened in my life from the time I was 18 years old until today. I went to high school as a farm boy in a family of 5 in our family. I was the only one that was allowed to go to high school. And the only reason I went to high school is because I begged my father to go. I wanted to go. And he says, well, I need you at home to help service and do the jobs that we got here on the farm. But I went. And I graduated in 1941. And of course, December 7th was Pearl Harbor attack. And we were coming home from church on a Sunday. And we had the radio on in the car. And they announced that the Japs had attacked Pearl Harbor. So I said to my mother and my dad, I said, I'm going to go down there tomorrow and sign up and kill those dirty so-and-sos. My dad said, you just wait. You're probably going to get killed quick enough the way it is. So we waited, my buddies and I waited for 2 months, and then we just went ahead and enlisted. However, the night before my physical, the people that I work with, they had a little party. And you might say I was probably overserved. And when I came home from the party, I rolled my car over. And I ended up with a black eye and a lump on the head, and I wasn't feeling well. When I got to the Army recruiting center, I sat down, and this big major, the doctor, he tells me to hold out my hands. He said, you're too nervous for the service. I said, what the hell are you talking about? There's nothing wrong with me that a good night's sleep wouldn't cure. He says, you can't tell me what to do. I said, I sure can. I'm a civilian. I can tell you anything. So that was my start. He says, you give me 3 good reasons why I should not reject you, you know. I said, well, first of all, my 3 buddies have been accepted into the Marine Corps. Second of all, I worked in a factory with about 100 women, and he took up a collection and gave me a cash gift. I said, if I go back to work, I got to give him that money back. And I said, I just got to go. I promised my buddies I would join them. He said, he stamped my file jacket. He said to me, take your 4F and go home. He said, a lot of guys in the next room would gladly trade places with you. I said, well, I'm not one of them. So, but I had to go. I had to go home. I got home. My father had his card-playing friends at our house, and they all said, well, are you in the Army? I looked down. I was ashamed and I was sad. I said, I've been rejected. And one of the guys of my dad's friends said, why, I told him that I got rejected because I had a black eye and a lump on the head and other stuff. He says, why, you little so-and-so, you stay home and stop chasing girls and drinking beer, you'll be just fine. He says, you behave and maybe you can get back in. So I went to the draft board and I asked if I could volunteer for enlistment. They said, no, we can't do that here. So I went back for 3 Saturdays, and I said to the guy, you're going to sign me up? He said, you really want to go, don't you? I said, yes, I do want to go. So he said, well, I'll just write your name in on the bottom of the list, and you come here next week and get on the bus and go to Milwaukee and take your physical again. However, I behaved after that, so I knew I wouldn't be sick again, you know. So I got to Milwaukee a week later. The same major was sitting at his table. I sat down. He looked at me. He gave me the minimum test. He stamped my file. He said, next. I wanted to tell him, why, you stupid so-and-so, you rejected me because I had a hangover. But here's the sad part. My 3 buddies who were accepted into the Marine Corps went to Guadalcanal, and they did not come back. Because of a hangover, I'm here. It was tough. I was inducted into the military police at Fort Custer, Michigan. We had training there for about 6 months, and then we went to Fort Campbell, Kentucky. We had a huge detachment of German prisoners, and I speak German fluently, and I was used as an interpreter. The farmers in the area around Fort Campbell were able to hire 10 German prisoners each day to work on their farm to harvest their crops. I went along as an interpreter to tell the guys what to do because none of them spoke English. So one day I'm on the farm with these 10 prisoners, And this farmer had a railroad track that ran through his property. And one day their prisoners were out working. They were across the railroad tracks, and a big, long freight train came along. And I lost sight of my prisoners. I said to myself, holy something or other. I said, I can't see those guys. They'll probably be gone. But the train went past. There wasn't a prisoner on the field. All of a sudden I heard one giggle, another one giggle. They were hiding from me. They knew that I would be worried, you know. Because if you lose a prisoner when you're guarding him, you take his place. So I'm glad that they were. They laughed about it. They said, "Where are we going? We don't speak English. We have no money. We have uniforms that say PW on it." You know. About 6 months later, we left Fort Campbell for Europe. We got on a troop ship in Brooklyn Navy Yards, and we headed out across the Atlantic in December of 1942. The weather was terrible. The ocean, the waves were 20, 30 feet high, and Reuben got very seasick. When I would have to hang my head over the railing to do what I had to do, I would have laughed all the way to the grave if we'd have been torpedoed. I was hoping that would happen, but it didn't. So we got to England. We were on the water 12 days. We got to England, and we had to get out in the middle of the night and walk 10 miles in the dark to an abandoned Italian prisoner of war camp that was to be our home until we made our next move. So I was assigned to highway patrol on a motorcycle. Of course, I love motorcycles too, you know. And I was out there patrolling one day, and an American staff car went screaming through my jurisdiction area. And I out after him to stop him. And narrow country roads in England, the farmer had just run his herd of cattle across the road. Along with that was a fresh supply of cow manure. And I'm coming around the curve at about 70 miles an hour. I slid into manure, and I got banged up pretty good. Thank heavens I had on a heavy leather jacket, leather breeches, leather boots, and a heavy helmet and heavy gloves. I lost a lot of skin, and I was black and blue from my toes to my nose. So I had to go to a dispensary to get treated. And we stayed there a few days, and we knew something big was going to happen soon, because all the equipment that was running down towards the English Channel, we weren't far away. So after we got out of the hospital area, we went to we went to an area where units could draw men to fill their ranks from the guys that were in the hospital for one reason or another. They told us to watch the bulletin board. So one day I come out there, here's my name, Reuben Schaetzel, 701st Tank Battalion. I said, what the hell is a tank battalion? My deal jacket said I was unfit for hazardous duty after getting out of the clinic. So I took my records and I went to the commanding officer there, and I said, so you must have made a mistake. I'm unfit for hazardous duty, and you got me signed up as a tank driver. He says, well, we looked at your records. You look pretty good to me. You're assigned to a tank crew. Excuse me, I got to take a drink. Thanks for the gin. So I was assigned to a tank as a tank driver on a Sherman tank. I had never been close to one before. And I had 5 days of training on the sands of the beach in England. The name of the port, I forgot. I don't know what that was. So we knew we were heading for something big. They loaded us in LSTs, that's called a landing ship tank for all you Navy guys. You know. And we had, our tanks were loaded into the tank deck, and we headed out across the English Channel at about 1 o'clock in the morning of June 6th. You never saw so many planes in your life that possibly all in the same sky. You could have walked on the planes. Ships of all description and size, the English Channel was full. We knew we had our work cut out for us. As we approached the coastline of France on Omaha Beach, all we could see was red lights blinking all the way up and down the beach as far as you could see. Only those weren't red lights, they were artillery shells. We had our tanks waterproofed for about 6 feet of water. Our English skipper got kind of nervous from the heavy shell fire, and they dropped us off in 10 feet of water. Only we weren't aware, it might have been 8 feet, maybe, that's probably closer. They dropped the hatch, the front gate, to leave us, to unload us, and we hit the water, and the water came up to my periscope. A tank has a periscope about a foot long, 3 inches high, and on a swivel, so you can see in all directions with the hatch door closed, as we did when we were in combat. I see the water come up to my hatch, to my periscope. I said to my tank commander, we're in trouble. Only I didn't use that language. He says, I said, we're too deep. We're supposed to be below 6 feet. And he said, well, just give her hell. So those were his last words. We took a direct hit, blew the turret off, killed the tank commander, the gunner, and the loader, and blew me out of my assistant driver and I had just popped open our hatch doors to abandon the tank when we got hit, and we were blown out into the water. Now here's the real kicker, folks. I don't swim a stroke. Not one stroke. I became an Olympic swimmer. Instantly. I really went like hell, you know. And until my feet hit the sand, where we could crawl and hide in back of an obstacle. If you've seen TV and these cross steel metal beams, those were the tank obstacles. If you'd come in and the ships would come in at high tide and wouldn't go out till low tide, they would be impaled on those obstacles. Well, I and several other guys were hiding behind the same obstacle, except there was no cover there. You just laid there. And the bodies were floating like lily pads. And the fire going on all around you, you cannot imagine the noise and what was happening. I saw one body float past me. It was floating on his face. And on the back of his field jacket, he had the map of Wisconsin stenciled on that field jacket. Now, the military allowed us to do that. We could put our state on our field jacket. However, he had made an X on the county that he lived. He lived in Washington County. And that is my county, where I live as a farmer. I turned him over, and here it was, one of my neighbor's hired men. Him and I used to go roller skating and chasing girls and stuff like that. You all know how that goes, you know. And we went out together. We just hung out together. Good guy. His name was Alphonse Janzer. I looked at him. I vowed that I would call his parents when I got home. And I did that. That was probably one of the hardest things I've ever had to do, is to go to their house and open up old wounds, you know. Everybody cried. I told his parents that he didn't suffer because he had taken a round through his neck, so he was killed instantly. He wasn't shot up like a lot of bodies that I saw, and I impressed upon them that he was not shot up. He did not suffer, and he died doing his job. And from then on, I said, I pity the poor German that gets in front of me from here on in. You got to make up for that. We laid behind those barricades, behind those barracks, those iron metal things, till later in the afternoon. An American armored vehicle came smoking down the beach, picking up survivors and getting them off the beach. and the bullets were rattling off the side of this armored vehicle. And he pulled up and he hollered, "Get in," and he didn't have to holler. We were there. And he got us off the beach. He drove to a marshalling area that we had on our maps. And from there to a field where we already had, we stayed there overnight on the beach someplace. I don't remember where it was. It was not very good. So the next day they took us to an area, and we picked up some new tanks and replacement members for our tank crews. And we started out across France. I got to refer to my notes here, see where I am. We started out across the peninsula of France. We were going down the street one night with our tanks, and there's cobblestone streets in those small towns, and the streets are very narrow. Well, we widened them. And we were getting heavy fire from someplace, and we didn't know where it was. So my platoon leader says, "You guys turn around. We went the wrong way." Well, to begin with, the tank hardly fit in that street. So I did what I had to do. I backed up, took a wall out of a house, came forward, and there was a guy looking out of the window with a flashlight. I put my gun barrel right in through the bedroom window, and to back up, I pulled out to back up to turn around, and I had the window frame and the curtain hanging on my gun barrel. And I'll bet you that old German talked to his grandchildren the rest of his life about having an American tank in his bedroom. He didn't get hurt, but I remodeled the house. Then we went further along. This one day, we came coming down the road, and these French people had a garden, and they had nice trees and nice stuff, and they were hoeing we were pretty close to the German border, so they were hoeing their garden, and they were shaking their rakes at us and giving us the Heil Hitler salute. And they came over to our tanks and were pounding on our tanks with their rakes and their hoes. I said to my tank commander, "Don't you think we ought to rototill their garden?" We did. And the orchard, and the fences, and the garden. And they gave us the Nazi salute. That wasn't very smart. We did our job. Another thing happened to me. We're going along in Germany. Pull into a farmyard one day. The reason we pulled in there, I saw two young ladies out there, very attractive, and we had to stay someplace anyhow. So I figured here's a good place to stay. And the farmer was in the barn milking his cows. So I went in the barn. I'm carrying a submachine gun, and I had a beard and my tanker's uniform. And looked kind of rough, you know. And the farmer, he turned white. He thought I was there to kill him, you know. I greeted him in German and started talking to him. He said, "You speak good German?" Yeah, I do. I said, have you got another milk pail? He says, what do you want to do? I said, I want to help you milk your cows. He said, Americans don't milk cows. I said, the hell they don't. I said, I milk cows, eight of them in the morning and 8 at night for years. So he gave me a milk pail, and I milked 3 cows to his 2. So then I thanked him, and his wife made supper for us guys. And our commanding officer said, okay, you guys, hands off, you don't touch. And we had to, under protest, we obeyed his order. Further down the road, we were we had crossed the Rhine. We had crossed the Rhine. That Rhine crossing was not very good. We crossed on pontoon boats with our tanks on these pontoon boats, and I had each tank had an infantry guy walking ahead of the tank on those pontoons with a little pencil light just to show us where to go. Now that the Rhine River was fast-moving body of water, and those pontoons weren't very stable. They kept going up and down, and all of a sudden this infantry guy is waving his light at me to stop. One of my tracks got off of the pontoon, and I was in the water with just 1/2 of my tank. Well, he directed me to back up and get back on the pontoon, but that was kind of an exciting ride, you know. We were traveling, after that, we were traveling through Germany, one town after the other, and you lose track of the towns. And we're coming through this small town, and there was a German soldier down in the cellar with a whole pile of bazookas. And my tank was the first one in the platoon, and he shot us from about 100 feet. He couldn't miss, and hit the turret, killed the top 3 guys again. We were lucky because in a tank we sat down a little lower than the ones in the turret. They were up about as high as our head, so that was the first thing they hit. Killed the tank commander, the gunner, and the loader. And so then this guy comes out of the basement with his hands up to surrender. Big mistake. He died right there, you know. The guys put about 200 bullets in him. They just rolled him down the road. The object lesson was, if you're going to surrender, do it before you kill your enemy. Then you might live. So, but he wasn't very smart. So we had to stay. I had to stay with my tank that night. I was ordered to do so because when you're in combat, you don't leave your buddies lay. You stay with them or take them along. So I stayed with that tank that night. I wasn't feeling very good. I got burnt a little bit up on my back and my rear and got skinned up a little bit. And of course I was sick over the fact that my buddies were laying in the turret. They didn't know it hit them either. So during the night, we were right near a cemetery, and there was a caretaker's building, in that cemetery. And I thought, by gosh, I'll take my sleeping bag and go into that caretaker's building and sleep there till tomorrow, next morning. So there was no electricity, there was a hole in the roof, and the door was locked. I kicked it in, no lights, a table there, and I unrolled my sleeping bag and crawled in and slept for a while until the sun came up, shining through the holes in the roof. And I just looked around a little bit, and here was a Nazi soldier. He had hung himself, and he was about 3 feet from my head all night long. But he was very dead, you know. He had a Nazi flag wrapped around him. And I got out of there real quick. I went back to my tank. I sat there a while. All of a sudden, here comes a Jeep down the road with 4 stars on the license plate. General Patton. I'm going to have a drink. Getting shaky here. Sure enough, I see that Jeep with the 4 stars. I said, sure enough, General Patton. He jumped out of his Jeep, come over and grabbed the gun barrel of the tank and swung up onto the tank like all tankers do. And I'm sitting in the back of the turret, and I never got up to salute him or anything. Now, you know, Patton required military discipline, and normally he would never have allowed that. But I never even got up to salute him or nothing. He came and hunkered down by me. He put his arm around my back. He said, "What happened here, soldier?" I told him to go look in the turret, General. He looked in the turret, and he was white. He come out there, he was white. He says, "I want you to kill every one of those SOBs." He came back by me and hunkered down again, and he said, "Where are you from?" I said, "Wisconsin." "Are you okay?" I said, "I'll be okay. I'll be all right." Well, he patted me on the back. He says, "Good luck, soldier." And he got up and jumped off the tank, and there went Patton down the road. It's quite a thrill for me to get that close to General Patton. However, a few days later, we're going through a small town, and I had acquired a black top hat, silk top hat. In Germany, chimney sweeps wore black top hats, you know, and silk ones. So we were in this German house, and I liked the looks of that hat, so I just took it along with me. I had that hat on with no helmet, that hat. I had a cigar in my mouth, sunglasses on, and a green scarf around my neck. I come around the curve in this little town, and here sits Patton in the Jeep, sitting on the back seat, watching the column of armor come through. And I saw him a fraction of a second before he saw me. I dropped my seat with a lever on the side, kicked off my hat, spit out the cigar, tore my glasses off, put my helmet back on, pulled my seat up, and he looked. He knew he saw something, but he wasn't sure. That was how close I came to General Patton. Then we went further. We came into Nuremberg. Now, Nuremberg Stadium, you know, Nuremberg has this huge Olympic stadium, which is about 3 times the size of Lambeau Field, and that's big. And if any of you people remember history, in 1936, we had the International Olympics at the Sportsplatz, that's sports place in English. We had it there for the whole world. And in one of the running events, one of our boys was the winner. And Adolf Hitler was there. And as is the rule, he's supposed to shake hands with the winner. However, this young gentleman was African American, and Hitler did not cotton to that. He refused to acknowledge this fact. So above his stand was a huge American Nazi flag. I almost said American flag. A huge Nazi flag. And I said to my tank commander, I have to have that. He said, Schaetzel, you're crazy. I said, I gotta have it, Sergeant. He said, no. I said, yeah. And I just got out of the tank and went up into that stadium. A lot of steps to go up there. And there was snipers on both ends of that stadium, but they were lousy shots, you know. They didn't hit nothing. And I got up to where the ropes were for that flag, and I reeled it in, and my tank commander is down below screaming at me because we were being shelled by artillery. And so I got down. Did you ever try running down the steps with a blanket? Try it sometime. I fell. I rolled half the way down with that Nazi flag, and it was big. So I put that flag into a ball and jammed it to my turret, and jumped into my tank, and drove off. Now, when I got home after World War II, my mother wanted to air that flag out because it was kind of musty and moldy and it smelled kind of bad. So she's going to do me a favor and hang it on the wash line to dry out on the farm. Well, Germantown is a pretty heavy German community. And we had a lot of traffic that stopped pretty quick and wanted to know what in the hell we were doing flying a Nazi flag. And my mother says, well, my boy just got home from service and he wants to air it out. And they told her politely, get it off that wash line, you know. They didn't think it was a good place to be, you know. Further down the road, we went through a mountainous area. First of all, we were in a small town, another small town. We were in a lot of towns. And we stopped our tanks, and there were some young people on the side of the road. They were kind of nervously anxious to see American soldiers up close, you know. And this one young lady, I talked with her, and I gave her some cigarettes. I don't smoke. I've never smoked, but I would always have a supply of cigarettes to give to somebody that wanted them. And she said, we have a burgomaster here. A burgomaster is the mayor of a town. She told me that this burgomaster had a German staff car stashed in his barn. I said, oh, is that right? She said, yeah, and she told me where it was. So we went out there with a platoon of tanks to this farm, pulled in the yard. Farmer came out very nervous. He said, I said, have you got a German staff car here? No, I don't have nothing like that. And we pulled up to the barn, and I said to my crew, I said, go take some hay forks and go up in that hay mow and poke around, Sure enough, bang, bang, there was that Mercedes-Benz staff car. Beautiful. That car today would be worth untold money, I've seen them on the pickers, and I know how much those cars would go for. So we requisitioned that car. We took it with us, and we were near the Autobahn in Germany. So myself and 2 or 3 other guys, we were there for about 6 days. So we took this Mercedes up and down the Autobahn, 120, 130 miles an hour with that thing. It was a beautiful car. It was a 12-cylinder, leather. It had holsters in the doors for P-38 Lugers. It had bulletproof windows, and it was quite an impressive car. It was the property of a high-ranking Nazi officer. He figured after the war he'd come back and get it. So we were up and down the Autobahn, and the military police tried to catch us, but they're only driving Jeeps and Harley 45 motorcycles. Top speed is about 75, and we were going 125. And finally that sifted through to our high command, and a notice was posted that it's been rumored that American soldiers are driving a staff car on the Autobahn and defying the military police. If you're caught, you're in trouble. So we decided we better dump that Mercedes. Now, what are you going to do? We certainly couldn't put it in our column, take it with us. So I drove it up into the Hartz Mountains, put a rock on the foot accelerator and let it go. Over and down 5,000 feet down into the valley. That was the end of the Mercedes-Benz, But it'd been nice if I could have brought it home, but no such luck. I told your boss here, he asked me yesterday, how long am I going to speak? I said, about 2 hours. She reminded me of something. Thank you, Kathy. Leanne, thanks. I was called on to take some German prisoners, German high-ranking Nazi officers, to London to be interrogated by the counterintelligence. Counterintelligence is the FBI of the military. So we're on the C-47 going back across Europe into England, and the weather was kind of rough on the English Channel, and this C-47s aren't the most comfortable things in the world. They are not made for passengers, they're made for supplies. Well, I had these 6 or 7 high-ranking officers. They're in the C-47. I'm on the other end of the plane, and it got kind of rough. And all of a sudden I heard a screech. Lo and behold, this one German major had these big desert pants on with the big pockets on the side, and out comes a rhesus monkey that he had smuggled home from Africa. He brought this monkey home with him, and the monkey got airsick, and he come out of that guy's pocket, throwing up and pooping all at the same time. every time he landed, there was a big yellow blotch, you know. So I said, I'll catch that monkey. And I caught the monkey, and the C-47s have about an 8-inch cover like you see on a fire hydrant, a brass cover to throw empty shells out or get fresh air. So I said, I'll give this monkey some fresh air. I held the monkey up to the door and he was gone. Suction pulled him right out of my hand. And this major, he's crying and hollering at me. He's, oh, my monkey, my monkey, my monkey, my monkey. He's hollering at me, and he's accusing me of abusing a high-ranking German officer. I said, Major, I'll tell you what. If you're so damn anxious to get your monkey back, I'll open the door. You can chase him. Can't you just imagine some French farmer cultivating his corn and the monkey comes falling out of the sky? And I got to tell you, I told that story in Pilsen, Czechoslovakia, and the place erupted, you know. And it was that's one of the funniest things that I was involved in. Okay. Went through the Harz Mountains and coming down the hill, down the mountain, and I couldn't shift my tank. The linkage was jammed. So we're going down, and I told my tank commander, I lost control, I can't stop the tank. I told them, my crew to get on the back deck and jump off. And they went on the back deck, but I was going so fast they couldn't move. They were afraid to move. Well, I went down the mountains and finally stopped the tank at the foot of the mountains. My mess kit had fallen off of my counter and fell into the shifting linkage. I couldn't shift it. Not a very pleasant ride. We were involved in the Battle of the Bulge also, and that's something that never thought would happen. We figured we had the Germans all beat, but they gave us. We had to fight our way through Belgium during the Battle of the Bulge, but we chased their butts out of there and proceeded to cross into Western Europe. We ended up in Pilsen, Czechoslovakia. And that's where the war ended. We spent about a week there, and I was working as an interpreter to interrogate all the people that were released from the labor camps, and Hitler had taken everything from them, and they had no place to go and nothing except what they had on their back. So myself and a couple of other guys that spoke German had to help interrogate these people and get them back home, hopefully, to where they came from. Well, the war ended there when we were originally supposed to go to Japan, but President Harry Truman, dropped the big bomb in Tokyo, and that changed our plans totally. For us, the war was over, and we were allowed to come home. I came home on a heavy cruiser, and that was a lot better than the one we went overseas with. You could have ice cream all hours of the night, change the sheets every day. It's really spoiled us. Okay, really? Okay. Take those along. So the war was over for me and for all of us, you know. So when I got back home, my mother didn't know I was coming. And my brother had just come home 2 weeks before I did. I met my brother twice in Europe. He came to see me. It was quite a reunion. And he brought me we were still living on the farm, and he brought me to our house. And you've all seen movies of the proverbial soldier with the duffel bag on his back coming home. Well, that was me, too. I knocked on the door. My mother came to the door. She looked at me, and she grabbed me. She took me into the living room and closed the door, and she sobbed, and she sobbed. I'd never seen my mother cry in her life, because she was a tough old German herself. And she was so happy that her 2 boys got home. And everybody wasn't quite that lucky. Now, folks, I got a lot of stories. I could stand here for the 2 hours and talk, but I understand you guys got to go back to class. That's a shame, you know. I'm just getting started. I want to say this. Thank you so much for the privilege of coming here to talk to you guys. At my tender age, I thank everybody, you know. Where I work, people ask me when I'm going to retire. I said, never happened, you know. So I want to thank you very much, and I hope you got something out of it. And before I close, I just I'm going to sing you a little song. She's a grand old flag, she's a high-flying flag, and forever in peace may she wave. It reminds me of the land I love, the home of the free and the brave. Every heart beats true with the red, white, and blue, where there's never a boast or brag. Should odd acquaintance be forgot, keep your eye on that grand old flag. Isn't she a beauty? Thank you very much. Thank you, thank you, thank you. God bless you, and God bless America.
Okay, well, thank you, Reuben. That was wonderful. So, ladies and gentlemen, if you could join me in another round of applause for our guest.
I want to thank all these guys with these caps on. I love you all.
It's going to be a tough act to follow, but our Oshkosh North Chorale would now like to add their thanks to our nation's veterans by performing the song, The World of Our Dreams, featuring soloists Emmeline Liskey and Margaret Berger on the oboe. Republic. Thank you to our music department. And next, I'll welcome Ms. Schleicher to the stage.
At this time, I would like to invite Art Howard and Bernie Faust up to the stage with me. Art and Bernie are Navy veterans and have been friends for over 50 years, and I believe have been with us for all 7 years of this program. Both retired from Rockwell International right here in Oshkosh, Wisconsin, and both have gone on their prospective honor flight to Washington, D.C. And would Mr. Stan Mack, superintendent of our school district, please also come to the stage.
Okay, thank you, and would everyone please rise as Mr. James Dorschner plays taps as we remember those who have given their lives to defend our country. Please remain standing as the color guard retires our nation's colors.
So before I close with one final story, I just want to clarify that Reuben did not have gin in his water bottle. He had water in his water bottle. Because the way the morning has gone, you might be wondering at this point. So a story, I always try to close with a story, and I try not to make it too sad or too happy, but just something real. And the power of a good old-fashioned story is something that can change our lives. And stories are things that teach us and remind us of the lessons and of what matters truly in our life. So this past August, I was out on a gorgeous sunny day in August before school started, walking with one of my really good friends. And we were talking about everything that is our world today. And we had shared stories, and one of the stories that she shared was about her dad, Richard. And a little bit about Richard, he had an incredible presence about him. He stood 6'2", was a basketball player in college, was an amazing husband, father, he has brother, he had 10 siblings in his family, he was a teacher, a basketball player, a musician, and a coach. Richard also was a member of the United States Army, and he served and was stationed in Korea during the Korean War. So my friend has shared a lot of stories about her dad in our time, in our talks, and this one particular story in August stuck with me. And the story goes like this. Their neighbors growing up, they grew up in Minnesota, and the neighbors next door had decided that they were going to adopt a little girl from Korea. And so my friend's family, along with their neighbors who were adopting a little girl, went to the airport that day to greet her as she got off the plane and entered the United States. The girls remember that little girl getting off the plane, obviously terrified, and there were a couple of adults with her because they're not going to send a 6-year-old overseas. She had a little eye patch on one of her eyes, and she looked incredibly scared, and they remember that she said that her tummy hurt her. Melanie was the little girl's name. She was 6 years old. I have a little girl, Maddie, so I can imagine that as a 6-year-old, when you enter into a country and you see people, you have no idea who they are. Melanie was probably old enough to be scared, to be lonely, to be sad, but she wasn't quite old enough to understand that she was going to be safe here and was going to be taken care of here. So my friend and her older sister did what any other little kids would do, and they greeted Melanie with some crayons and a little care package. And Melanie smiled when she received those crayons from the girls. And the adults who escorted Melanie here from Korea said it was the first time that they had seen her smile since they left. Still, Melanie was scared. You could see it. She was terrified. She didn't know anyone. She did not speak any English, and she did not know if and who she could trust. So then Richard, my friend's dad, walked over to Melanie. Now imagine, here's this 6-year-old little girl, and here's Richard, 6'2" basketball player, walking up to her. So the first thing Richard does is he makes himself the same size as Melanie. He got down on one knee right next to the little girl, and he began talking to Melanie. The only difference was that Richard spoke fluent Korean. And just like Melanie, they could sit and have a conversation. The entire time, he knelt down on one knee, looking into her one little eye that he could see that was not patched up, and he talked with Melanie in her language. He talked in Korean. So here they all stood at the airport, watching and listening as their dad helped comfort and reassure Melanie that she was going to be okay here. Richard did not know Melanie. Melanie certainly did not know Richard. But Richard knew her language. And that conversation changed Melanie's life, it changed Richard's life, and it changed the lives of everyone who heard it. My friend said that she had no idea that her dad could speak Korean. He never said that, he never spoke it when he got back from war. And until that moment, when he needed to for Melanie, he never used it. Not a single person to this day, besides Melanie and Richard, know exactly what was said in that conversation, but they didn't have to know. In that moment, everyone, and most importantly, Melanie knew that she was going to be okay here because Richard made sure she knew that. Melanie currently lives out in Pennsylvania and has a little girl of her own. And Richard and his amazing wife, Dee, raised 2 beautiful daughters. And Richard passed away after a long-fought battle of Alzheimer's disease 4 years ago. Just like Richard, I shared that story with you because each and every one of us here today have the power to change a life. And it is truly, guys, it's truly as simple as a warm smile, a simple hello to a stranger, and a few minutes of conversation to learn about each other's stories. If you want to be powerful when you leave Oshkosh North High School, if you want to change this world, you can. Smile at each other, say hello to each other, and listen to each other. Smiles are a universal language, and I promise you, no matter where you go in this world and no matter what you do, your smile will be felt and it will be noticed every single time. In every thread of every American flag, just like Reuben said, there is a story, there are many stories, and not just any story. They are stories about friends, about wives, about husbands, brothers, cousins, sisters, moms, dads, grandpas, grandmas. Each and every one of those people have given so much so that we can sit here today and enjoy the freedoms we have. A story about men and women who, even when they are not in active duty, still feel the responsibility to each of us to watch over and to protect us. They still feel the responsibility to share the lessons they learned while serving, the languages they picked up while overseas, and to show all of us that no matter how much fear, hate, and war exists in our world, the power of a smile, of kindness, and the willingness to look beyond all of our differences and see people as human beings is what matters. My challenge to each of us here today is to make sure we do not just go through the motions of every day, but slow down and ask to learn about each other. My challenge to each of us here today is to remember that although this is the day we come together to celebrate our veterans, the meaning behind Veterans Day, the reason we stand for the pledge, the reason you stand for the national anthem, is something we should never take for granted in this country. Life is too short and it's too precious to just go through the motions. Put your phones down, set your work aside, and talk to each other. Learn from each other, respect each other, and smile at each other. Take time to tell a story and take time to listen to someone's story because everyone has one. To our veterans here today, there are no words that can truly express the level of gratitude we have for all that you have given except for thank you. Thank you for teaching us what it means to be grateful for what we have. Thank you for watching over us and for protecting us, even if you're not in uniform. Thank you for being the faces and the stories behind the flag. On behalf of Oshkosh North High School, the Oshkosh Area School District, and the entire Oshkosh community, thank you for serving our country and for protecting our freedoms. Each of you have given so much to be grateful for, and for that we say thank you, veterans. You are truly what a hero is. We are grateful that you made it back home safely, and we know not all of your friends and loved ones did. We are grateful that you are here with us today. And may we always remember the stories and the sacrifices that each of you made for us. Oshkosh North High School, before we leave today, and veterans, before you come and join us for lunch, I ask our student body and our staff to please stand and give the brave men, women, and heroes the standing ovation they deserve. Thank you, and God bless.